Hey, welcome back. This next chapter of the BFG is called Snozzcumbers. Let's find out what Snozzcumbers are. But if you don't eat people like all the others, Sophie said, then what do you live on?
That is a squelching, tricky problem around here,
The BFG answered.
In this slosh-flunking giant country, happy eats like pineapples and pig winkles is simply not growing. Nothing is growing except for one extremely icky-poo vegetable. It's called a snozzcumber.
The Snozzcumber? Cried Sophie. There's no such thing. The BFG looked at Sophie and smiled, showing about 20 of his square white teeth.
Yesterday we was not believing in giants, was we? Today we is not believing in snozzcumbers. Just because we happen to not have actually seen something with our own two winkles, we think it is not existing. What about, for instance, the great squizzly Scotchhopper?
I beg your pardon, Sophie said.
And the humble crimp.
What's that?
And the rap rascal.
The what?
And the crumpscottle.
Are they animals?
They is common animals, said the BFG contemptuously. I is not a very know-all giant myself, but it seems to me that you is an absolutely know-nothing human being. Your brain is full of rotten wool.
You mean cotton wool?
What I mean and what I say is two different things. I will now show you a snozzcumber.
The BFG flung open a massive cupboard and took out the weirdest looking thing Sophie had ever seen. It was about half as long, again, as an ordinary man, but was much thicker. It was as thick around its girth as a perambulator. It was black, with white stripes along its length, and it was covered all over with coarse knobbles.
Here is the repulsant snozzcumber,
cried the BFG, waving it about.
I squoggle it, I mispise it, I disspunge it. But because I is refusing to gobble up human beings like the other animals, the other giants, I must spend my life guzzling up icky-poo snozzcumbers instead. If I don't, I will be nothing but skin and groans.
You mean skin and bones?
I know it's bones, but please understand that I cannot be helping if I sometimes is saying things a little squiggly. I is trying my very best all the time.
The big friendly giant looked suddenly so forlorn that Sophie got quite upset. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be so rude.
There never was any schools to teach me talking in giant country, the BFG said sadly.
But couldn't your mother have taught you?
My mother? Giants don't have mothers. Surely you was knowing that.
I did not know that.
Whoever heard of a woman giant?
Shouted the BFG, waving the snozzcumber around his head like a lasso.
There never was a woman giant, and there never will be one. Giants is always men.
Sophie felt herself getting a little muddled. Well, in that case, how were you born?
Giants isn't born. Giants appears. And that's all there is to it. They simply appears. The same way as the sun and the stars.
And when did you appear?
How on earth would I be knowing a thing like that? It was so long ago I couldn't count.
You mean you don't even know how old you are?
No giant is knowing that. All I is knowing about myself is that I is very old, very, very, very old and crumply. Perhaps as old as the earth.
What happens when a giant dies? Sophie asked.
Giants is never dying, the BFG answered. Sometimes and quite suddenly a giant is disappearing, and nobody is ever knowing where he goes to, but mostly us giants is simply going on and on like whiffsly time twiddlers.
The BFG was still holding the awesome snozzcumber in his right hand, and now he put one end into his mouth and bit off a huge hunk of it. He started crunching it up, and the noise he made was like the crunching of lumps of ice.
It's filthing, he sputtered, speaking with his mouth full and spraying large pieces of Snozzcumber like bullets in Sophie's direction. Sophie hopped around on the tabletop, ducking out of the way. It's disgusterous, BFG gurgled. It's sickable, it's rotsome, it's maggot-wise. Try it yourself, this foulsome Snozzcumber.
No, thank you,
Sophie said, backing away. It's all you're going to be guzzling around here from now on, so you might as well get used to it. Go on, you snipsy little winkle, have a go.
Sophie took a small nibble. Ah! She sputtered. Oh, no! Oh, gosh, oh, help! She spat it out quickly. It tastes of frog skins and rotten fish.
Worse than that, said the BFG, roaring with laughter. To me, it's tasting of cockroaches and slime wanglers.
Do we really have to eat it? Sophie said.
You do, unless you was wanting to become so thin you will be disappearing into a thick ear.
Oh, into thin air. A thick ear is something quite different. Once again, that sad, winsome look came into the BFG's eyes. Words is, such a tickling problem to me all my life. You must simply try to be patient and stop squibbling. Am I telling you before? I know exactly what words I'm wanting to say, but somehow or other there's always getting squiddled around. That happens to everyone, Sophie said.
Not like it happens to me. I is speaking the most terrible Wigglish.
I think you speak beautifully.
You do? You really do?
Simply beautiful.
Well, that's the nicest present anybody has ever given me in my whole life. Are you sure you is not twiddling my leg?
Of course not, Sophie said. I just love the way you talk.
How wondercrump, cried the BFG, still beaming. How whoopsie splunkers, how absolutely squiffling. I is all of a stutter.
Listen, Sophie said. We don't have to eat Snozzcumbers. In the fields around our village, there are all sorts of lovely vegetables like cauliflowers and carrots. Why don't you get some of them the next time you go visiting? The BFG raised his great head proudly in the air. I is an honorable giant. I would rather be chewing up rotsome Snozzcumbers than snitching from other people. You stole me, Sophie said. I didn't steal you very much. After all, you is only a tiny little girl. And that was the chapter called The Snozzcumbers. The next chapter is called The Blood Bottler. Check back every day and see if there's one waiting for you.